I'm going to be preparing, seasoning and processing the whole venison I have butchered recently. I'm really showing you what I do with all of the meats. I process most of them and pack and season on one go when I have it fresh and ready, and then I have it very easy to use straight from the freezer. Of course, all of it is getting frozen because I don't need that amount of meat in the fridge. Hello everyone, it's Arleta here from the Health Geek Mom. Don't forget to stick around till the end where I'm going to show you all my geeked out calculation about how many portions of dinners I got out of that venison and how much it costed me actually per portion.
I start filling up the freezer with all the premium cuts of the venison I have. There are some fillets, shanks, steaks, roasts, some stew stuff as well here. I pre-seasoned some of those mixtures as my homemade meat seasoning, and some of them I leave without any seasoning just in case if I would want to try something different, some different flavors. Once I vacuum pack them, I write the weight, the date, and what type of cut it is. On some of them I also write cooking instructions, just for ease of use, especially on those really busy days when I just don't have capacity to be thinking about how to cook something. Once the premium cuts are sorted, I move to the stock making or broth making, whatever you want to call it. Actually, it's more following the recipe of a Polish rosól. Rosól is usually a chicken broth, but obviously here made with venison. The bunch of greens is made up with some leeks, celeriac leaves, parsley and lovage. I also add charred onions, carrots, root parsley. I thought if you don't have that you can use parsnip. For seasoning I also add some peppercorns, salt obviously, and also a slice of dehydrated porcini mushroom, which really helps with bringing the umami flavor in the stock. Definitely not enough salt, so I need to season it extra. Because I obviously had quite a large amount of bones, I have done a few different stock pots. So I done them in my slow cooker, anything about 12 hours. The one on the stovetop, they usually go more towards 6 to 8 hours. Once the broth is cooked, I take all the vegetables out. And then obviously I take all the meat and bones out as well, generally in different container. You will see me here moving the stuff around because there's only as many pots I have and it was quite a large batch, so I'm trying to make sure that I have space to strain the stock. As you will see me doing it here, I just strain it through a cheesecloth to make sure that, you know, all those kind of tiny pieces of meat and protein, whatever is strained. I'm quite particular. I really like my stock quite clear. Meanwhile, I peel all the meat off the bones, and a lot of the meat here in this case actually went to freezer for our bigos, which is a Polish hunter stew I do usually around Christmas time, and the rest of the meat I used for our dinner. Overall, the broth is well seasoned and kind of a finished product because I use it as a rosól, so we eat it with noodles or pasta and some vegetables, or you see there were some meat in there, and rest gets frozen. And so I either use it as a base of some soups or I just use it as a broth, and then it's practically ready to drink. It is really nice and yummy, but you can also use it for base for an Asian broths, which, you know, takes lots of herbs, ginger and garlic. All of my stock, soups, bolognese, other sauces I freeze in the super cubes. I will link this in the description below. Seriously, I have tried so many different ways to freeze liquids and sauces, and this is so far the best one I ever used. Once they freeze solid, I pop them out and move into the plastic bags, which I label. I'm going to make huge batch of I guess burgers, meatballs, and I'm hoping to get some meatloaf as well. I have got 2 kilograms of pork. We have 3.3 kilograms of venison here, venison mince, so I'm just going to add this all together. It's going to be really big batch. I do not measure this, I just eyeball everything. Okay, I may just need to do a voiceover because my daughter is playing in the background and they're up from their naps. So there's about 12 to 15 onions I have halved and diced in kotlety, our food processor. I also have some chopped herbs. There is marjoram and oregano, lovage, parsley and celeriac leaves. So actually, you know, the root celeriac, you can use the leaves for seasoning. I do that very often in my stocks. And lovage is also called a love celery. It is a perennial herb which is not hardy, so it will die down with first frost, but it comes up every year. Mine one is very, very big. You can see me here picking some leaves of it. Some kind of similar to parsley, although they're slightly bigger and flatter, a bit longer leaves. It has really lovely flavor. I like to use it for seasoning. It's very commonly used in Poland. And it has this very intense, almost like celery and parsley flavor. I like to add extra vegetables to my burgers and meatballs, so I have some finely diced carrots I just chopped in our food processor as well. And of course some of the eggs from our backyard hens. They are so nice and colorful. Oh, and I almost forgot breadcrumbs. So I do make my own breadcrumbs. I do make them from my own homemade sourdough bread. We always have some offcuts. I keep them on the side, dry them up, and once I have quite a lot, I just put them through my blender and just make breadcrumbs. You know, I generally don't necessarily feel like you need to add so much breadcrumbs to the mince, but because this is a slow fermented sourdough, and as well because I have the carrots and the onions, I feel like that sourdough breadcrumbs will nicely absorb the extra moisture and obviously bulk up the meat as well. This has been a bit of chaotic with the kids around, but overall what happens is I just mixed everything together with all the onions, carrots, herbs and breadcrumbs. I have put some of the mixture aside for the meatloaves, and a bit of extra carrots I added to that mixture for the meatloaves, so I'll show you later how am I doing this. I have put almost 3 kilograms of the mixture aside for the meatballs, and then rest went into making the burger patties and the meatballs. And that has been a bit of a start and stop process because there was so much of that mince I had to deal with. The burger patties I have made for about 100 grams each. So we see that I'm using the scale to weigh each of the patties. And then we eventually had some for dinner as well. I just fried them in some coconut oil. My portioning goes that I have 3 burgers per dinner because me and my husband eat 1 burger each. And my daughters are under 4, so they just share one. There used to be time when I used to make smaller patties for them, but at this point they're all happy with having half. And I had made over 40 of those burgers, then another 80 of meatballs, and then I had still meatloaves to deal with. We don't eat meatballs that often, so I decided only to do about 4 dinners worth of the meatballs, but I do make them very small because the kids will eat them more likely if they're really tiny. So it is about 20 meatballs per portion for us. I will share more about the costs and weights and all that stuff more at the end, but coming back to the burgers and the meatballs, so I freeze them in a single layer. Ideally, I had obviously quite a lot of them, so I had to double them up. I put some silicone mats between the layers, and I freeze them. Once they are frozen solid, I take them all out and move in some bag or container. Meatballs, the same process, but because they tend to stay longer in our freezer, I just vacuum pack them. So I put 20 meatballs in each of the bags, and I vacuum pack them. And then of course all that stuff comes back straight to the freezer very fast. And it's time for some fun facts. There are 2 main reasons why I make those at home. First of all, because they are more affordable that way, and obviously because they are healthier. Obviously, you can go to the shop and buy burgers, but the thing is that even if you go to really good place, you're going to most likely end up with something what I would classify as a UPF. UPFs are ultra processed foods. The easiest to understand definition of UPF I found is written by Chris Van Tolken, who wrote the Ultra Processed People book, which is amazing, by the way. He says that you could consider something an UPF if it has at least one ingredient which you will not find in a normal home kitchen. So out of curiosity, I have googled ingredients of just random burger from a supermarket, and of course it has ingredients which you will not find in a regular kitchen. I used to think that the preservative like sodium metabisulfite would be the one of the worst things, but after reading that book, I really think flavorings are potentially the worst. Maybe second after emulsifiers. So in this burger example, there is no emulsifiers, but there are flavorings and preservatives and extra sugar because you of course need that, and what else. For me, avoiding the UPFs is definitely one of the most important reasons why I do it all at home, even though it takes so much work. Speaking of, let's go back to making the meatloaf. To change the flavor a bit of the mince mixture, I decided to add some riced cauliflower to the mince mixture I put on the side from the burgers. I also added some garlic and a ground almond. I'll be honest, with the ground almonds, I was completely free-flowing here. I just had quite a lot of it, and I thought, why not try it and just see how it's going to work. It worked out alright. We ate some already, so I'm happy with it. What I do is I just mix everything together, and I actually did fry out of a bit of the mixtures to make sure that the seasoning is right. I also have added a bit of diced boczek, which is really Polish smoked cooked pork belly. It's a bacon. Essentially it tastes really similar to pancetta, at least that's why I think. I often use it in the place of pancetta in my carbonara as well. I do like add it to give a bit of a bite to the mixture. When you cut into the meatloaf, there's something nice and chunky, and fat always adds flavor. It's a good thing in my opinion. And then obviously I added a bit of salt and mixing it all together very well. At this point I realized that the mixture is a bit crumbly dry, so I have decided to add some eggs to kind of help bind it together. But I will be honest with you guys, I am not an expert on meatloaves. I have made maybe them twice before. I tried some nut loaves before, hence the idea of adding ground almond, because I kind of thought about combining both of the things, meatloaf and a nut roast. I'm as well quite bad with following recipe. I generally will research obsessively for a while, read and watch videos about how to make something. I kind of roughly look at the maybe main ingredients, and then I will free flow. I did decide to fry a bit of the mixture and check the seasoning.
More salt and garlic.
So once adjusting seasoning, I also decided to add some, do not judge me for the pronunciation, Worcestershire sauce. For the love of life, I lived in UK for 18 years and I still cannot say it properly. I divided the mixture in 6 equal parts. They're all about half a kilogram, and I put some bacon on each of them. Since I had a ton of mincemeat, I also have a bit of more burgers added to the freezer, but the drill is the same. I freeze them loosely, not touching, and then once they are frozen, rock solid, I move them into separate bags. For the meatloaves, I have vacuum packed them because they will probably stay in the freezer a bit longer. They are not something I go for as my first choice, but I do like to have the variety. And I also write the cooking instruction for them on the top, because I just know that if I don't do that, I will just avoid taking it because I will have no capacity to think about how to cook it.
Oh, and if you're wondering what to serve with your venison, well, there will be a video coming up on how I preserve my beetroots and how I pasteurize them in the jars for a quick, fast, healthy, unprocessed food.
And now onto the numbers. These are my rough notes, which I do during the processing, but I got it all nicely written for you.
From the whole deer I processed into the freezer, I got about 470 grams of liver, 900 grams meat for stew, 3.3 kilogram of mince, fillets about 710 grams, 600 grams in steaks, 590 grams in shanks, 910 grams in roast. I got some jerky, 460 grams, and almost 3 kilogram of bones, all totaling in about 8 kilograms of meat and 3 kilograms of bones. That is the total meat I got from that deer I have butchered recently. Looking at the meal portioning, I got over 40 meals from this. There is lots of different calculations. It might be a bit confusing for some people, but given that we paid £120 for the venison, for the deer, and I added the meat, pork meat to the burgers, that totals £132, and dividing it by 38 meals, it would be about $3.45 per dinner for a family of 4 for us. Obviously there are 2 adults and 2 very small kids, so that's just something what works out for us. I don't count costs of things like all the stuff I add to make the burgers or stock, things like that. A lot of that stuff comes from the garden. So on the top of those 44 meals, including jerky, or 38 meals not including jerky, I also got some cooked meat from the broths which I used in bigos, which is Polish hunter stew. Also still got some portions of bones to use either for gravy or for some small soup making or things like that. And I got over 4.5 liters of broths. Please subscribe if you want to hear more about natural, unprocessed, simple living. Until the next time.